Ain't got no home, ain't got no shoes, ain't got no money, ain't got no class, ain't got no skirts, ain't got no sweaters, ain't got no perfume, ain't got no love, ain't got no faith. I ain't got no culture, ain't got no mother, ain't got no father, ain't got no brother, ain't got no children, ain't got no aunts, ain't got no uncles, ain't got no love, ain't got no mind. I ain't got no country, ain't got no schooling, ain't got no friends, ain't got no nothing, ain't got no water, ain't got no air, ain't got no smoke, ain't got no ticket, ain't got no water, ain't got no love, ain't got no faith, ain't got no God, ain't got no wine, ain't got no money, ain't got no faith, ain't got no God, ain't got no love. And what have I got? Why am I alive anyway? Yeah, what have I got? Nobody can take away. I got my hair, I got my head, got my brains, got my head, got my eyes, got my nose, got my mouth. I got my sense. I got my arms, got my hands, got my fingers, got my legs, got my feet, got my toes, got my liver, got my blood. I've got life. I've got life. I've got a headache and toothache and bad times too, like you. I got my hair, got my head, got my brains, got my ears, got my eyes, got my nose, got my mouth. I got my smile. I got my tongue, got my chin, got my neck, got my boobies, got my heart, got my soul, got my back. I got my sex. I got my arms, got my hands, got my fingers, got my legs, got my feet, got my toes, got my liver, got my blood. I've got life. I've got my freedom. Oh, I've got
Okay, so this particular story in my life began about the 11th grade of high school. At the time, a lot of friends around me was taking pre-SAT courses, and they were trying to determine where they were going to go to college. And I knew for sure that college wasn't going to be in my immediate future. Number one, we didn't have the funds for it. Number two, at that time, there was only 2 years of math required for the minimum to graduate. I was struggling with algebra and pre-algebra, so I knew anything beyond that was probably unrealistic. So I decided to go into law enforcement. I'd heard some things and ended up calling around different states, Philadelphia, New York, Atlanta. I had actually passed every curriculum, psych test, and everything for Atlanta PD. And at the last minute, that fell through. At that point, I was kind of at a loss. I could not go to Houston Police Department, which is where I was from, because they, again, had added some things to their requirements, some of which being 2 years of college. Somebody suggested to me, hey, how about Harris County Sheriff's Department? I had never heard of Harris County Sheriff's Department because they patrolled and functioned in unincorporated Harris County, and I was a product of inner city, so all I knew was the city police. Long story short, I ended up going down to Harris County Sheriff's Department, filled out an application on May of '89, and in 6 months after that, I was hired on to become a Harris County Deputy Sheriff. They paid for me to go through the academy, which was at the time a 3-month long program. The academy was about 55 to 60 miles away from where I lived. I was married, I was 21 years old. I had a 6-month-old daughter. I had a little bitty piece of a car that had to drive that long distance every day. I was put through every type of physical activity and mental restraints and confrontations. And it was so stressful at the time that there was many times where I'd get home just in time to eat something real quick, and then I had to do homework, which would take another 3 or 4 hours. I had to learn the penal code. And oftentimes I'd get up and I'd throw that book across the room and say, I'm quitting. But after I got that out of my system, I'd go pick the book back up, get back to it, and do what needed to be done. Graduated from the academy, at first with the impression in my mind that I was gonna go in there and be valedictorian of the academy. And after a few weeks in there, I realized I just hope I make it through, okay? But when I did graduate, I graduated in what they called the super squad, which was those who were the elite of that class. We were the most physically fit. We were the most high scoring on all the exams. We shot the most accurately, and we ran the fastest and all of that type of stuff. So I was full of ego by the time I graduated that academy. I was a 32 waist. I could run 7 miles, and I was in the most physically fit condition I'd ever been in. So when they put me on the streets of Harris County, I was out to prove that I was the man. They put me in one of the most crime-filled areas, if you will, that you could think of. They had everything from prostitution to drugs to family violence calls and everything else. And not only did they put me in that area, but they put me in that area on the night shift. And so every day was a different adventure. Every day was either a fight, a chase, or something scary, and I was loving it all. People were beginning to know who I was in that neighborhood, and I would drive through certain crack-infested areas, sometimes just to see them run, because I knew they were going to take off running once they saw that patrol car come down the street. I was so ate up with myself and so full of ego that one night I pulled down this dark alleyway. You got to remember, this was, at this time, it was about 1994. There was no GPS. There were few officers on the street. If you didn't tell dispatch where you were, no one knew where you were. And at the time, we didn't have a lot of officers on the street. It might have been 3 officers per 50-mile radius. And so I went out down this alleyway to entertain myself, to be honest, and see people run, because that's how full of pride I was. And when I pulled down this dark alleyway, I didn't go out on the radio. Nobody knew where I was or what I was doing. Well, I saw 3 guys sitting over by this Section 8 housing project, and they were sitting on an AC unit. And they saw me, and I saw them, but the difference is they didn't run. And so I took that as an offense. I took that as a challenge. How dare you not run from me? I'm the big bad police. So I pull over, I get out of my car. Again, no one knows where I am. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I approach these 3 young guys sitting on the side of this wrought iron fence. And I asked them, do you not know who I am? And one of them spoke up and said, yeah, we know exactly who you are. I said, well, if you knew who I was, then you'd be running by now. And the other one said to me, well, we know who you are, but we also know that if you didn't have that badge and that gun, you wouldn't be all of what everybody claims you are. I said, really? That what you think? So at that time, I took my gun out of my holster and I sat it on the AC unit. I took my badge off of my shirt and I set it next to the gun. And I backed up and I said, no badge, no gun. Here I am. You want to find out whether I am what you say I'm not? They didn't do anything. In fact, they said, man, you tripping. You must be crazy. I said, that's right, I am crazy. I said, tonight I'm gonna let you make it because it's too late in the night and I don't feel like doing all this paperwork. But tomorrow when I come through here, if you don't run, it's gonna be a different story. They took me up on it. I put my gun back in my holster, badge back on my shirt, went patrolling the rest of the shift, thinking I had done something just so phenomenal. Oh man, I am the man. It wasn't until years later that God revealed to me that was one of the stupidest things I could have ever done. My life could have ended that very night. Not only could those three have jumped me and done something, not only did I know if they had something, but it could have been some more people around the corner. And I just didn't know. So I go to patrol in this neighborhood and my ego is still kicked in and I'm still making these arrests. I'm still arresting 3 and 4 people at one time by myself. Nobody can tell me that I'm not the man. Over the course of time, I began to get hardened in my heart. And I used to say things like, man, they need to just burn this block up. Wouldn't nobody miss them? They need to burn this block up with fire. So years go on down the road. I continue to patrol that area. I began to move around to different areas. And while I'm still working with the Sheriff's Department, still doing what I was doing, still making it all about me, God began to speak to me. And in his sovereign and mysterious humor, he decided to call me to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I asked him many a times, are you sure you want to call me? Not only was it a surprise to me, but it was a surprise to most people that I had worked it over the course of the years. But eventually I gave into that call. Now in my mind, calling to preach, I had these big pretty pews in mind and I had stained glass windows in mind and I can wear some nice suits on Sunday. But again, with that humor of God's, when he called me to preach, after I surrendered to the calling, he ended up sending me under the tutelage and mentorship of a pastor who ran a homeless ministry in the middle of Roots Park, which is a park in downtown Houston, which is full of drug addicts, prostitutes, violence, and any other thing you can think of. Now, this pastor every Sunday would go to this park and he would feed these people great meals that he would prepare by himself. And he would feed them sandwiches before, and then we would preach the word, and then he would feed them the great meal. But during the preaching, somebody might be having sex over on that corner. Somebody might be fighting over there. People running back and forth, gambling, shooting up, which is why I can preach anywhere indoors today. It doesn't faze me, because if you could preach in that atmosphere, you could preach anywhere. But all the while I was preaching, I was also packing. And when the food would be served, I would see the people complaining about what the pastor was feeding them. Man, we had this same stuff last week. When are you going to get something new on the menu? And I would get furious. And I would check, man, how you going to be mad because you eating something that you ate last week when if he wasn't here, you wouldn't eat it all. And my pastor would get mad at me. And he said, no, Reverend, you need to watch yourself. He said, these are not your people. These are God's people. It's not for you to determine how they react. All you need to be concerned about is what we're here for, and that's to serve. Well, that blew my mind. My heart was just that callous. If you can't say thank you, I'm not going to fool with you. And he would tell me again, look, I don't need the policeman. I need the preacher. So over the course of time and watching him serve and watching these things unfold as they were, God began to soften my heart. And I'm still working with the Sheriff's Department. I was during the weekend and on Wednesdays doing ministry. and doing police work all the rest of the week. And people would ask me, how are you able to be a preacher and a policeman, thinking that they're supposed to be conflicting vocations? And I said, well, actually, it actually helps me to be a better police officer. Well, in the meantime, while I'm still working with the Sheriff's Department, I leave that particular ministry for a while and I go and start my own church. I'm pastoring one church until an opportunity comes where they say, hey, we want you to come pastor our church. Now, here's that sense of humor of God's again. I accept the offer, but it's a church and a pastoral position over a drug and alcohol rehabilitation facility, where all of those same people that I dealt with in the very beginning of my career, and later on after I began preaching in the park, now they're in a confined ministry where everything is taking place inside the facility that used to take place on the street that used to infuriate me. I'd go to church sometimes, and right after having a great Bible study, have to break up a fight in the parking lot. I'd have to tell them, if I have to come in here and y'all fighting in this sanctuary one more time, I'm gonna take you to jail myself. I'd pull up sometimes while I was at work to check on the ministry while I was in the patrol car in uniform. I'd pull up and my own congregation would take off running until somebody say, oh, no, it's all right. That's just pastor, y'all. That's just pastor. He cool. I go to church and people would find out, first of all, they'd see on my hip that gun, because I'm still packing now. I have to, it's the law. And they see that gun and they'd be whispering, the new people would be whispering, who is that? Oh, that's Pastor Morales, he's the police. And half of them would love me and the other half be mean mugging me the whole time I'm preaching. They'd be looking at me like, I don't like the law. And I'd be looking at them like, okay, yeah, I'm the preacher, but I got passed too. So we can do this one or two ways. Make it easy on yourself so I know which way to go. Right hand Bible, left hand, So anyway, I served there as a pastor for a long time. We developed some great relationships. I'm no longer the pastor over there, but as a matter of fact, as recently as Resurrection Sunday, I was over there preaching the Easter message, and it was all love. During my ministries and policing at the same time, I told you I used to say, they need to burn this block up with fire. God spoke to me one day when I passed down some of those same streets, and he said, you remember how you used to want me to burn this place up with fire? He said, I want you to burn it up with my word. I said, are you serious? He said, I'm dead serious. And so those very streets that I used to go and have fights with and pursuits with and take crack off the streets and domestic violence and wanted to burn it up to get rid of it, now I was called to be an agent of change. And so I would go out there on Sundays now, sometimes by myself, sometimes my wife and my kids, and I would set up a little podium and a little microphone stand, and I would preach the gospel on those streets, trying to burn it up with the word of God. And some of those same people in that housing project would come out and they would listen, and they'd even give what they could as an offering, and I looked at God and I said, wow, this is great. This is who knew? Long story short, I ended up continuing to preach, continuing to work. And after 31 years of service, it came time for me to retire. And I was so ready to retire. I was so done with all of that. I was going to retire, never look back, go fishing, have a good time, enjoy life. After all, I did what I was supposed to do there. I've been faithful in the ministry over here. Now it's my season. So I retire, and I said, I'm going to give myself 3 months. I retired in November. And I said, in January, I'm going to put some pen to paper. I'm going to get some new ministry ideas. We're going to go at it this way, that way. And 3 months after I was ready to get back to working in ministry with something concrete, we had a major freeze in Houston, and all my pipes burst, and my house was completely destroyed, all except for the master bedroom. I had to be dislocated, moved out of my house for 6 months, me and my family. Okay, all the while I feel like I'm grasping at straws and not really sure what direction the ministry was going. Not sure why, this and that was going on. But once I get back to the house, it'll be smooth sailing from there. God's got me. Everything is cool. Get back to the house. Wife is dealing with severe illnesses. Things begin to pile up. The pandemic hit. Isolation. Now she can't go nowhere. Now her mental state is fragile. Her physical state is fragile. I'm on pins and needles having to make sure that she's okay, that nothing is going to happen, that depression doesn't take over my household. Still trying to do ministry, still trying to stay in the word and be encouraged. She gets better. And the better she got, the worse I got. To the point where I became very irritable. I don't do big crowds. Most of the time when I'm standing somewhere, I'm standing with my arms folded, always on alert. And people started telling me, and I can't sleep. I can't tell you today when the last time I had a good night's sleep was. And when I do get to sleep, it's nightmares of all sorts. But more recently, from work, things that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, brand new. Seen death in every kind of way you can see it. From homicide to suicide, natural murder, any way you name it, I've seen it. And now I'm seeing it again. People convince me to go talk to somebody. Get you some help. Nothing wrong with talking to somebody. So I decide, okay, well, if I'm going to talk to somebody, it's going to be a Christian counselor. So I go to my insurance, I go to the website, and I start looking at different profiles. But I was looking at it from a wrong perspective, and I had some superficial ideas, and can't talk to him. Not going to talk to her. She look mean. He can't tell me nothing. I could tell him anything, and he'd believe it. I finally just settled on one lady, and she was cool. We talked a little bit, and we connected a little bit, and she diagnosed me with PTSD. And I said, really? Evidently, everything that I had dealt with over the course of years, I had not properly dealt with it emotionally. That's not what I do. And now that I had all this free time, when I'm thinking it's going to be my season, as it were, I'm having to hash through all of these emotions and feelings and pent-up aggressions. Well, this therapist became unavailable, and we really didn't click, so I stopped going to her until it began to get worse again. My wife said, you need to go talk to somebody. So I did the same thing this time. I'm looking through profiles, see who's easy to look at, who might not tell me what I want to hear. And nothing was settling in my spirit until I came across this one profile, and it read good. It said deals with PTSD and stress and anger management and all of these types of things, all of which I was dealing with, but it didn't have a picture. And I'm not just going to go sit up and talk to somebody if I don't even know what they look like. I need to know what I'm looking at. Finally, I gave in. And I said, God, if this is who I'm supposed to talk to, just let me know and work it out. I go and I make my first appointment, and I go in and I meet with this therapist. She's a younger woman. She's middle-aged, not too young, not too old. She's pregnant, but she is so cool. And she allows me to talk with no judgment, and she feels real, and it's strange. I just felt like she felt me. And after that first session, I fell in love. I was like, this is it. And matter of fact, I like her so much that me and my wife, when we talked, I told her, I got to go see my baby mama next week. That's my baby's mama. Because that's how easily we connect. And she says, yeah, okay, well, all of this and do this and do that. She says, I'm going to disagree with your first therapist who said you had PTSD. That would mean you are dysfunctional. And obviously you are still functional, but you do have postpartum stress syndrome, which means you are dealing with it and you can cope with it. And there are exercises that you can do in order to function more prosperously, if you will. And I started thinking, man, this is so cool. How is it that she can relate to me the way she does? Well, in our conversation one day, it comes up, her husband is actually a Houston Police Department SWAT officer. And so God, all along the way, knowing exactly what I needed, who I needed, where I needed to be, sent me to this woman without me even seeing a picture, in spite of my own reservations. And she can relate to me because she's living with another person who's going through the same thing I do. And so while I don't get down that this is not the misconceived season that people oftentimes think is supposed to come when you are faithful in your service to God or elsewhere, while everything is not smiles and songs every day, I still have hope, because God still gives me nuggets to let me know I'm still in control, I still got you, and there's still more ahead. And that's why I go from day to day, and that's why I'm here right now, and that's my story.
Life.